We'll ignore the sign this week on motoring and hit the track. What are we driving? We'll stick around because believe me, it doesn't get any better than this.
TSN's Motoring 97 is brought to you by Quaker State. The big Q stands for quality, always has, always will. And Midas, the way it should be.
Well, this is it, the fastest machine on four wheels that Porsche has ever delivered to the roads of North America, the 911 Turbo. And you know, it's great to look at, but to fully appreciate the performance of this vehicle without losing your license, you gotta head to the racetrack. And later on, one of Canada's top Porsche drivers is going to join us behind the wheel at Mostport. So stay with us. But first, we're going to join a young Canadian whose dream came true on the Indy Lights circuit. Not behind the wheel, but would you believe, behind the wrench? This story really began 2 years ago when three engineering students at the University of Waterloo decided to build and race an SAE car, which was successful on the Solo Series. But like all students, after graduation they had to think about their futures. Todd Malloy didn't have to think long though, he knew exactly where he wanted to go.
After I graduated and that was over, I really didn't know what to do with myself. I didn't want to go and work as a plain old engineer. I really liked racing, and the option of doing a master's degree was there, and it looked really like a good option. So I thought, well, maybe I'll just go and find out if I can get a job in racing.
And so I just asked him, I said, "You're used to working like a dog?" He said, "Yeah." And he says, "I was in charge of the SAE project at Waterloo, and says I'd get up at 7 o'clock in the morning, work till 11 o'clock at night, sometimes sleep beside the car." And it was all the words that I wanted to hear from a mechanic. And so I hired him as a mechanic, not as a mechanical engineer. My hopes for him is that he'll work as a mechanic and gain experience so that he can be an engineer, because I would prefer to hire Canadian engineers and all Canadian mechanics as opposed to what I have to do now, which is go to England to find an engineer, and that's why he's here. I have a three-car team. The car that he's working on is driven by Galter Salas. He's from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. He's won the last two races. He's been on the front row the last four races. And the way that I run the team is that each car is its own little racing team. And so that Ivan and Todd will never ever work on one of the other cars and vice versa. And Ivan's from Montreal, and I think he's the best chief mechanic in the series.
You got tire upcutters there?
Brian is the man who makes the decision to hire him. But Todd has to work with you on a day-to-day basis. Just tell me about your feelings on that.
It's getting better and better. You know, the point is like you got all the theory, now you have to get the practice from all what you learned in school. I think you think that the thing is kind of a hard step, but he liked the challenge, I think, so he's doing a good job.
The relationship between driver, mechanic, and engineer, it's very close. You have to trust each other. They have to trust everything that I say, and I have to trust that they are doing the things as I say, and the car has been prepared properly. But it's been great, and everything is working very smoothly. Todd is working with me since Portland. He's a very good guy, very good mechanic, and he's very lucky because he's here for 2 races and we won both times. If this keeps happening, I'm gonna have to bring him to IndyCar with me.
They're all about 3 pounds low. Take them up.
Are you feeling just a little fatherly pride today? Tell me what's going through your head.
More than just a little. I'm really happy. He's been working towards a career in racing for a long time, and I'm really glad to see him get a start in it. I think he could go a long way.
He's a very good driver. And so of course I learned from him, and also he's an excellent engineer, and a lot of my habits, a lot of sort of my approach toward engineering, towards working on cars, was developed from him. And he's got a wealth of experience, and I honestly just can't say enough about him. Other than I love him. He's the best dad you could have.
Galter Salas is on the front row for the Toronto race. After 2 straight victories, he is second in the overall championship behind David Eppingham, who is further back on the grid.
Yeah, I'm just getting the pit set up for the race. We don't plan on having any stops. Obviously, if we do, we're not going to win, but you never know. You get a flat or something. We want to be ready to do a quick tire change and minimize damage. So. Yeah, the wing covers, regardless of where we end up, we always cover our wings. I mean, this is a spec series and everybody has to run the same chassis. So the last thing you want, particularly when you're running at the front, is for anybody to see your settings. So that's the reason all the wings you'll see are covered. Anytime the bonnet's off, the shocks will be covered and such. Not until that checker flies, man.
Not cheer until the checker, wait for the checker.
Yes! Woo! Yeah! Amazing. That's all I have to say. 3 for 3. Good stuff.
For the Indy Lights honors, a very special gentleman out of Rio de Janeiro in Brazil for Brian Stewart Racing, our Canadian team, Walter Salas. Would you welcome Walter?
This is amazing. It's so hard to get into racing. It's so unbelievable to start at the top. Thrilled.
You know Todd better than anybody. You know he'd do it.
Oh, I've got absolute confidence he can do whatever he decides he can do. I mean, he's just part of a team here, but he's a part you can depend on, I'm sure of that.
Thanks, man.
Next on Test Drive, double your pleasure, double your fun. Drive 2 cats instead of 1.
Sun, sand, sea, twisty mountain roads, they're all part of this week's test drive as we take a look at the hippest cat in town. This is Jaguar's all-new XK8.
The XK8 is offered with or without a lid. The commentary for either remains the same, except when in the alfresco mode. Beneath the skin is the first V8 engine in Jaguar's history. It is powerful to the tune of 290 horsepower and 284 pounds-feet of torque. And it is sophisticated, featuring 4 camshafts, 32 valves and variable cam phasing. The result is an engine that combines effortless acceleration with silky smoothness. On-road, the engine pulls big time, and it does so in a linear fashion right throughout the rev range. It also sings one sweet melody, especially when you work the gas pedal.
At long last, the ergonomic nightmare of the XJS is gone. The new XK8, well, everything has a place and everything's in its place. Power locks, windows, mirrors, 2-position memory for the driver's seat, a full set of analog gauges that includes an oil pressure gauge, battery voltage, and something of a rarity today, and that's a clock with real hands. Moving down the center stack, there's a wonderful set of climate controls that can be operated with gloves on, great for us in Canada, superb sounding stereo, and last but not least, Jaguar's J-gate shifter. Pull it down to here, now you've got a 5-speed automatic transmission. Slide it over here, and you've got 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, so it allows you to have a little bit of fun with the car. Now, when you're in the drive mode, there's also a sport and normal. That allows you to get either fuel economy or better upshift patterns. The only thing I'm not sure about, they say wood adds warmth to the interior of a car. On the XK8, we've got a roaring blaze going here because the amount of wood in here, I think it's a little bit of overkill, you know.
The XK8 gets a traction control system that cuts engine power and applies the brakes in the event of unwanted wheel spin. Much of the hardware used by the track system does double duty, controlling the standard 4-wheel anti-lock brake system. The stopping power, in short, is the equal of the powertrain, strong, linear and fade-free.
This box represents your average family sedan. With the roof on, stiff. Lift the roof off, now the thing becomes flimsy and flexible. Well, that's the exact problem faced by engineers when they take the roof off a car. Unfortunately, on this Jaguar, when they took the roof off, they left too much cowl shake in, given the price.
The rack and pinion steering is speed sensitive and offers a variable ratio. The rack is designed so that the rate at which the road wheel turns in quickens as you approach the extreme of the lock. The suspension uses a short, long-arm double wishbone setup up front and a double wishbone that incorporates the drive shaft as the upper links in back and stabilizer bars at both ends. The ride is cushioned and swallows just about everything thrown at it in a smooth and unflappable manner, yet allows the driver to go wailing into a corner without feeling like a kamikaze pilot. Even as you near the limit, the XK8 remains stable, neutral, and decidedly balanced. If there is a drawback, it is that the driver is almost too comfortable and isolated from the action.
I do have a pet peeve, and I'm not going to let Jaguar away with it, and it has to do with the manner in which they heat the front windshield. In North America, we use a single piece of gold leaf that's transparent to heat the front of the windshield. Not in this Jaguar. Oh no, that would be too simple. They've embedded hundreds of little tiny wires into the glass. The result, whenever your focus is towards the front of the vehicle, I find them very distracting. Now, with all of the help they got from Ford, they should have taken the windshield out of the Taurus.
The convertible top is a cinch to operate. Simply push a button and the whole lot is done for you in a matter of seconds. Noteworthy is the fact that you can raise and lower the top at up to 10 miles an hour. Now that is a novelty.
From the outside, the trunk looks to be on the small side. However, open it. Not only will it accommodate 2 sets of golf clubs, it'll also accommodate a full-size spare. Nice one, Jag. The other intriguing part is up front. Headlight washers that will be unaffected by ice. You know, some things really are worth the wait, and the XK8 is a good example. The car it replaces, the XJS, was only remarkable because of its dreadful lack of power and awful interior ergonomics. The XK8, on the other hand, well, they got it right. It's comfortable, it's got one of the sweetest engines in the world, and it combines E-Type heritage with state-of-the-art technology in a stunning package. And you know what? They'll sell every one they can bring.
During the design process for the original Ford Windstar, a British company called International Automotive Design suggested adding a 4th door. Ford decided against it, only to see Chrysler add the 4th door to its highly successful NS minivan. It's been rumored Ford will be adding the door in the future, but we can confirm it won't be in 1998. While on a shoot recently, Motoring inadvertently discovered 6 98 Windstar prototypes and some surprised Ford engineers who made a hasty exit. We did learn the 98 model will get a longer left side front door and a driver's seat that tilts forward to allow access to the rear, as in most coupes. The new Windstar will also feature a new grille and hood.
Our Midas tip of the week concerns shifting your automatic transmission into gear. I'm sure you're all aware that on the first start or a cold start, all vehicles have an extremely high idle speed, some worse than others. Carbureted cars are quite bad for this. Extremely high idle speed when they're cold, you kick them down before you put them into gear. Fuel-injected cars do the same kind of thing electronically. They have a high idle speed when they're cold. Not nearly as high or as bad as that carbureted car, but in any case, any vehicle with an extremely high idle speed, you should wait a minute or two until it settles down. You may be able to kick it down in some cases, but wait till it settles down to a nice, low, smooth idle before you engage driver reverse. That'll take a lot of shock and stress off the driveline components of that vehicle when you shift it into gear. Transmission components will last longer and work better. That's your Midas tip of the week.
A portion of Motoring 97 is brought to you by the Solder Seal Gunk family of automotive products, makers of Puncture Seal Gold and Liquid Wrench.
We're back here with our 911 twin-turbo Porsche. With me now, Rick By, who's been driving Porsches most of his life. In fact, Rick won the Firehawk Endurance Series in 91 and 92. driving a Porsche. And Rick has been kind enough to get behind the wheel, and we're now going out on the Mosport track to experience a Porsche the only way it can be experienced, and that's with this man behind it. Let's go, Rick.
From my impression, the Porsche from the beginning of their run in 1977, 1976, I suppose, was when the first modern era 911 Turbo was introduced, and they've been improved and improved from that time on, have been very much the same style of car to drive. They were high horsepower, rear-wheel drive cars. The problem got to the point where the power got to be so much that I believe that it was getting difficult to harness that power in two-wheel drive. And we were having Porsche was having a traction problem, and consequently the subsequent handling problems that you would get with having a car in the area of 300 to 400 horsepower in just rear-wheel drive. And I think they went in with a clean sheet of paper with this car and used a four-wheel drive system, and it's a newly designed system for them, even from their previous one in 1990. From my way of thinking, from that time on, this is the first major change to come along in this model of car. For me, the biggest thing is the introduction of the twin turbo system, and unlike other people's sequential twin turbos, Porsche have put two turbos in parallel actually, and there's two small turbos, one for each bank. Because they're only trying to operate 3 cylinders each, they can come on right away at a very low RPM, spin up very quickly, and make pressure right away. So consequently, the car has no turbo lag. This car doesn't have that problem. This car has got instant power the moment you hit the gas. And consequently, there's no indication while you're driving it that it's turbocharged. Fortunately, most people who can afford to buy one of these are fairly intelligent, and are intelligent enough to be somewhat intimidated by the car, and that's a very good sign of a good sign of intelligence, is when somebody's a little bit timid with it. The thing is, be ultra careful. It's all too easy to fall into the trap that the car will get me out of anything, because this car feels like it can do anything. You feel like Superman in it.
Well, I want to thank Rick Bye for giving yours truly the thrill of a lifetime in this Porsche here at Mosport. Now, Rick tells me the top speed on the twin turbo is 310 kilometers an hour. And we all know there's only one place you can go at that speed without losing your license, and that's the birthplace of Porsche, the Autobahn in Germany. Now, the price tag is $156,000 on the twin turbo. Now, if you don't have a lot of spare change, you can always pick up the Carrera 4S for about $120 minus the turbo. That's a lot of money, though. Imagine how many pickup trucks you could buy with that kind of money. And you know, I know just the man who can figure out all the mathematics for us, and that's Bill Gardner. Bill?
Brad, $156,000 car, can't believe it, but you know something? The way I would buy my pickup truck, I figure out the door with tax and everything, it'd probably be about $24,000. So I could get 6.459 pickup trucks for the price of that Porsche twin turbo. You know, what are you going to do with that Porsche twin turbo in the wintertime? 400 horsepower and tires this wide and this far from the rim to the road. You can't drive a car like that in the wintertime. What I want to talk about this week is the kind of things you would have to do to a car just like that Porsche, or any other piece of machinery for that matter, that you want to store for the winter. It's a procedure we call engine fogging. It's something that guys at marinas have been doing for years to stern drives and outboard motors that they store for the winter. I want to show you how it would apply to a car or any other piece of machinery that you might store seasonally, like a snowblower, lawnmower, etc. The car you're looking at right now is a 1972 Olds Cutlass Supreme. Now, as great as this car looks and runs, you might think that it's been heavily restored. Well, believe me, it hasn't. With the exception of a couple of paint jobs over the years, this car is pretty much purely stock. The entire drivetrain has never been touched. Now, the key to this car's success is the fact that it's been stored away for many winters. It's escaped the ravages of the typical Canadian winter. Now, when you store a car, or for that matter, any piece of machinery away for an extended period of time like that, you need to take special procedures. Now, the bottom end of the engine that's lubricated by the engine oil is pretty much safe. If you change the engine oil and filter just prior to storage, the connecting rods, crankshaft, camshaft, etc., that are bathed in that oil will be well taken care of. But up in the combustion chamber, the top end of that engine, the cylinder walls, piston rings, valves, etc., they only ever receive a very thin film of lubrication under normal conditions. Now, when the engines run every day, that film always remains there. But when it's stored away for several months, that film completely disappears, leaving those parts unprotected. Now, if you go to restart that vehicle several months later, it's quite conceivable that you could do a lot of damage to it. You could take several years worth of normal wear out of that engine just on that first restart. Okay, now what we're going to do to fog this engine, it's up to operating temperature. You just remove the air intake, air cleaner or whatever. It doesn't matter whether it's fuel injected or carburetor. You need to get to that air intake area. You take your fogging fluid, the aerosol, and you spray it into the engine in short bursts like this. You can see that it goes in sort of, it looks like shaving cream, and you can hear that it's reducing the idle on this engine. You spray it in both halves of the carburetor on this 4-barrel. You can hear it slowing right down. And eventually it just snuffs the engine. It literally strangles it on that oil. Now that we've fogged this engine, we're going to shut off the ignition and push this vehicle into its storage location so that we don't use up that film of lubricant that we've just installed in the combustion chambers of this engine. That fogging fluid is going to protect our cylinder walls, piston rings, and valves during that storage period. And this is a viable product for any internal combustion engine that you happen to own. If it's used seasonally, fogging it is a real good idea to protect it from that wear that's going to occur on a dry startup next season. Now, if you're looking for a product like this, it's called fogging fluid for seasonal engine storage, and you can buy it at most auto parts stores. It's a great product, and believe me, it's going to save you a lot of wear and tear in your machinery. Till next week, I'm Bill Gardner for Motoring 97.
Look at those jerks waiting to the last second to butt in there. You think they couldn't see those arrows from a mile away? More whining coming up next on Kenzie's Corner. You know, the best thing about driving in Germany isn't the fact that you can go 150 miles an hour past a cop and have him wave at you instead of shoot at you. Now, I know you're tired of me whining about how great Germany is, but one thing they won't do over there is wait to the last instant to butt into line when a lane ends on the Autobahn. Over there, they see the signs, they put the turn signal on, and they merge nice and orderly. It's after you, Heinrich. No, after you, Gerhard. Dankeschön, bitteschön. It's beautiful. But over here, there's always some jerk that thinks his schedule is so much more important than yours, he's got to cut everybody off just to gain a couple of car lengths. Now, he'd never do that in a movie lineup. The other movie patrons would beat him to death. So why do we let them get away with it on the highway? We should leave these guys hanging out there till they starve to death. That's what would happen in Germany, and that's why their driving behavior is so much better than ours. Now, maybe you're alone in your car, and the guy who's cutting you off has got 3 of his Neanderthal friends in the car, and you're afraid he might come out and beat you to a pulp. But these guys are bullies, and just like in the schoolyard, we've got to stand up to them, otherwise their behavior will never change. So the next time it happens to you, leave the guy hanging out there, point to the back of the line and tell him to get back there where he belongs. Otherwise, these boors are never going to learn any manners. I'm Jim Kenzie.
You know, we've all heard of people who want to be buried with their cars. Well, I've always thought these people were just a little eccentric. But you know, after driving this 911 Turbo, this masterpiece of German engineering, I don't know. If there's a highway up there somewhere, I know what I want to be driving. Well, that's it for now. We'll see you next week. So make sure you join us as we continue to bring you more stories about cars and the people who drive them.
Yeah, I'm very much frustrated with that kind of general perception that Toyota is expensive. Even if purchase time, they have to pay a little bit more, but overall, that is the good investment.
TSN's Motoring 97 has been brought to you by Quaker State. The big Q stands for quality, always has, always will, and Midas, the way it should be.